on that. Right? If you come to Tareem, they would even encourage the ladies not to attach themselves even to male mashayikh. This is the extent of how they want to protect the hearts of the sisters. Hubaba Noor in Darul Zahra, when the Mawlid is going on the weekly basis, obviously they have the screen generally which the public come and follow, but the girls of Darul Zahra are not allowed to look at the screen, right? And this is based on what? This is based on the saying of Sayyidina Fatima Zahra. She was asked, what is best for a woman? What did she say? The Prophet ﷺ once asked, or was asked, he asked the Sahaba, what is best? What is the Prophet ﷺ didn't say it himself, he waited for her. And her haya and her modesty was such also that when she passed away, or she knew she was going to pass away, she was more concerned that her deceased body, covered in the coffin, would be visible to the men who were carrying her, or the people that would be carrying. Because generally when a janazah is carried and it's tied in the coffin, you can still see the shape of the body. She was more concerned that her body was not seen in that particular state, even after she passed away. And then one of the companions who were in Abyssinia told her, one of her friends who are the Sahabiyat who were in Abyssinia said, I saw something amazing in Abyssinia. When the ladies pass away, over their janazah they put sort of branches of trees. It's almost like a dome, and they have a cloth over that. So it looks like a little domed structure over the grave. And she became extremely happy, and she said, when I pass away, that's what I want you to do. Right? And obviously, like I said, in the West, we have to try and understand the context. If someone comes to deen practically, and it might not be the place for everyone. There are many brothers and sisters who come and say, this is a bit too much for me. Or meaning too much, meaning I'm not yet at that level. And no one is expected to be at that level. But spirituality is a continuum. A person doesn't finally decide, okay, I want to get close to Allah, and they are expected to do everything in one go. Or that they need to change their lives overnight. The whole purpose of spirituality is that it is organic. It happens at a person's own pace. Now what's beautiful about Tareem is, even though we have this very high level of people living practically the deen on these very high levels, everyone is accepted as they are. Come as you are. You find brothers coming to Dar Mustafa, some of them in the initial days they'd wear a suit and tie, some would wear jeans, right? Some would even come with spiked hair. The locals, no one says anything about them. They'll come, they'll even attend the salah. Even after salah they'll come and they'll greet Habib Umar, and he smiles at them, right? And not a few weeks or months go by, generally they naturally then just acclimatize, right? And this is the secret of the collective when we come into company of these people. Yesterday or the day before, Habib, the daughter of Habib Ali al-Mashhur, Hubaba Maryam, and she was obviously the daughter of Habib Ali al-Mashhur, so we can imagine the tarbiyah that she had. And she was someone that continued the legacy of the ladies in Tareem, this very, very, very pure training, spiritual training. And it wasn't just words which was spoken, it was a life which they actually lived. And obviously, if she was the daughter of Habib al-Mashhur, she had met Hubaba Zahra, who was obviously her grandmother, the wife of Habib Umar bin Hafiz, the father of Habib Umar. And the stories we hear about and we read about Sayyidina Fatima Zahra, right? This is the lives that they actually lived. We know when Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu anha got married, there wasn't even the utensils of the house that were enough, right? It was simple things, and Habib Umar mentions this. He says even when his father got married, he had nothing, right? And he brought whatever he had, which resembled almost what Sayyidina Ali gave Sayyidina Fatima on the day that she got married. And they chose a life of asceticism and zuhud, and their only concern was to teach people. And even though they live, as I said, on this very, very high level, they would accept sisters who would come from all over the world on their different levels, and the sisters would feel that they were loved by these teachers more than even their own parents, because of the care and because of the concern that they had over the tarbiyah. Habib Ali al-Mashhur, whenever he would speak, there was almost this burn that you would sense in his heart when he would speak about now the changes that whole night. So he says, okay, you know what, and he was traveling his first day, he says, alright, I'm just going to, he doesn't even want to worship Allah himself, he just wants to watch how they are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, I'll sit here for a while, and when they go home, then I'll go home. And his host tells him, these people are not going to go home, they're going to be here till the morning, right? And he stays awake the whole night watching them and doing whatever he can of ibadah. He says, it's the first time in my life I ever stayed awake the whole night. And then he explains how he'd be the person in the corner, then later on as the night progresses, someone else comes in, stands in another corner, and then someone else comes in, until the time of tahajjud, and the entire masjid is filled, and they read their fajr. And then he's expecting after fajr that they all go, but no, after fajr the lesson continues up until the time of ishraq, and then he expects they're all going to go home after ishraq. Instead they all go, renew their wudu, and come and read the ishraq and their duha. And this lifestyle was still existing up until very, very, very recently, right? When the communists came to Tarim, one of the reasons obviously of the enemies of Islam was to break these chains and break these customs. This is the same thing that the British did in India when they went, right? To break those chains of connection, especially of the ulama, and especially of this Ahl Bayt. One of the things the communists were actually looking for when they came to Tarim was the Shajara, the book that contains the names of all the Sada al-Ba'alawi in Tarim. This is the official book that they write. Anyone from the Sada al-Ba'alawi who was born, it is recorded, right? So that the lineage obviously can be protected, and also no one can claim to be from the Ahl Bayt if they are not part of the Ahl Bayt. It's a very protected book. And when the communists came, they were already aware of the book, right? We can see to the extent to which they had monitored the Ummah and also known about Tarim and the effect that this tarbiyah is having or will have on the world. And they decided, and Habib Ali al-Mashhur, at that time, when the communists came, we know the story about how, and again when we're talking of Habib Muhammad, this Hawaba Maryam, and obviously this was her grandfather, right? And she would have been hearing these stories directly from her father, and what her father himself went through. When Habib Muhammad bin Hafiz was involved in the da'wah, and then the communists came, and the communists came with an iron hand, and they wanted all dini and religious institutions and work to close. And what happened was the Ribat of Tarim closed down. All of the Islamic institutions that were currently there closed down. Many of the masajid, right, had to stop whatever lessons that was happening. Many of the ulama were forced to leave because they were either going to be imprisoned or to be killed. Many of them then went to Saudi Arabia, some of them went to the Emirates, right? Some of them went to Oman. And there was absolutely no way of practicing the deen, very similar to what Turkey went through when Ataturk took over. Habib Muhammad bin Hafiz continued his da'wah. He didn't remain silent. And those ulama who continued to speak, they would actually kill them. And there's Habib Salim al-Shatri actually wrote a book about the atrocities that the communists committed against the ulama in Tarim. The reason that book hasn't been published is because some of the people who were responsible for that were still alive or are still alive, and it will create sensitivities if that book obviously becomes, or some of the names are mentioned. Some of the ways in which they would torture the ulama in Tarim, and we see what happens to the people of the deen, the sacrifices that they give for the deen, and on account of that Allah rewards their efforts and their sacrifices. So they would imprison the ulama and obviously torture them and keep them in prison for however many months or years. Then after a while they would announce to the family and the city that we are going to be releasing so and so, and we're going to be releasing so and so from prison. And so the whole family and the city would come out to witness the release, obviously, because it's a happy day and they want to see. And what they would do, they would bring them out, tie their legs to the car, and then drag them through the city until they passed away, in front of the eyes of the entire family and people. It was very, very difficult days. Habib Salim al-Shatri, when he was imprisoned in Aden, the day he was released, they planned for a car to come in, knock him. They couldn't, certain ulama, obviously, they couldn't execute or they couldn't kill because of their nature and their stature, and they bumped Habib Salim, or they tried to take him out with the car, and his knees forever after that were affected. Habib Saad as well, he was put into prison. He memorized the Quran in prison. On account of this as well, Habib Umar went to the north of Yemen, and he went to the north of Yemen to study with Habib Muhammad al-Hattar, who ended up becoming his father-in-law. Habib Ali al-Mashhur in this entire period remained in Tarim. Right? Remained in Tarim, and we know the story. Habib Muhammad, who's the father of Habib Umar and Habib Ali al-Mashhur, he was forced, what they call Iqama Jabriya, he was forced to remain in the city. He couldn't leave the city of Tarim, and every single day at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, he had to go and sign to prove that he's still in the city and he hasn't actually escaped the city. And this is what he would do every single day. And we know on that day in Jum'ah, when he went to Jum'ah, they would go to Jum'ah early, do the adhkar. When the time came, 11 o'clock, he left his shawl, Habib Umar was with him, and he went to sign. And he never returned. Habib Umar went home after the Jum'ah, obviously waiting. He went home with the shawl, and he says, my father didn't return. Obviously they became concerned and they went asking. No one knew what happened. The communist authorities at that time, pretending that they didn't know what had happened, they came to the house asking, where's Habib Muhammad bin Salim al-Hafiz? You guys are hiding him away and you've allowed him to escape. Right? And they would take the butt of the gun and even hit Habib Ali in the head. They would take the gun also from the back of their heads, threatening them in a different direction, telling them, if you don't let him come, we're going to kill you, and then shoot the gun with that very, very fearful sound at the back of his head. And they would go and ransack the house. This is the same house Habib Maryam. She was brought up in these conditions. And Habib Ali al-Mashhur knew they were coming for the book which contained all the names of the Sada al-Alawi, which they call the Shajara. And so he hid it in the walls. The walls are made of mud. He dug a hole into the wall and he hid that book in the wall. And obviously there's a whole history of what happened afterwards. During all this time, Habib Ali al-Mashhur remained in Tarim. And he continued to teach in that condition. Right? Habib Salim, the reason they abducted him was because even though they had silenced and closed many of the institutions in Tarim, he continued to speak and he continued to give da'wah and he continued to speak out against the communist regime. People told him they're going to kill you if you continue. He says, this is actually what we want. The Sahaba gave their life for the deen, And they sought out Shahada. Now Shahada is seeking me out. Do you want me to run away from it? Right? And so, no one actually knows what happened to Habib Muhammad bin Hafiz, where they took him, what they did to him, how they tortured him. Right? And when he passed away, obviously the awliya in their own internal spiritual would have known certain things, but physically it's not known where and what happened to Habib Muhammad bin Hafiz. And you can imagine how traumatic this is for that family, right? And for also the people that are living in that household. And they continue to live this condition. Habib Umar's family, his children, Habib Ali al-Mashhur, who's his brother, are probably the last family on the face of the earth today of the Sada al-Alawi, in which when they describe them, they say this is the alim, son of an 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 alim, 41 generations going all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. Each and every single one of them a scholar. Each and every single one of them a wali, son of a wali, son of a wali, going all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. Not just the wali, the highest level, qutub, son of a qutub, son of a qutub, son of a qutub, going all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. Right? There were many families like that in Tarim. And the reason also that the communists came is then they cut those generations. There was a generation that then was separated from that tarbiyah, from that training, from that education. The family still exists, but the continuation of the scholarship, today I think now Habib Umar's family is the last one. It requires us to make dua for them as well. They are holding the responsibility. When we look at the tarbiyah of the Ahl Bayt, again, even in the book, The Moroccan Sojourn, an interesting story. This, they call him the Moroccan pilgrim. So he comes to Tarim, and at the Dars of Ishraq, he is listening to the teacher, and he says the teacher was still a young boy. But all the people in the gathering are of different ages. And then he starts talking about himself when he was a young boy. And he says, I came home one day after Ishraq, and I went and I asked my mother if she had coffee. My mother, he says, when I entered my house, my mother was reading her Ishraq Salah. And so I waited for her, and when she had finished her Salah, I asked her and I said, can I have some coffee? He says, her mother became upset. He said, my mother became upset with me. She says, what is this connection that you have to food? That you're more concerned about coffee than your ibadah and your worship. You come into the house and the first thing you ask for is coffee. And he says he only wanted it because it gives me energy, it gives me it wakes me up for my ibadah. So his sister comes to him and she says, you've upset your mother. You need to make tawbah, the tawbah that you made the day of qahqaha, the day that you laughed aloud. Qahqaha means this very jovial type of laughing, ha 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 ha. So people are concerned, what's the day of, what was the day of jovial laughing? And he says, one day we were in the house, myself and my sister, and the children of the house, and we were talking, but we ended up laughing aloud. And the mother was also in Ishraq Salah. She completed her Ishraq Salah and she said, Subhanallah, has the house of the Ahl Bayt of the Prophet ﷺ turned into a marketplace where voices are raised and people laugh aloud? And the servant of the house came then, took them and taught them and told them, you have to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this very bad etiquette and this bad adab. Right? This was the level in which they lived. Just laughing aloud was regarded as an enormity in the homes. And this exact tarbiyah exists still today in the house of Habib Umar, and Habib Ali al-Mashhur would bring his children up on the very same tarbiyah. It wasn't just stories that were read, it was practical and it was lived. The women of Tarim as well, it it was known that even the way they wear their